Hi, we're already over time by 2 minutes. I am so glad to be here today. Again, I was here last year, but I was in a wheelchair. So I am thrilled to be able to stand here in front of you without a wheelchair. I'm Joyce Brand. My passion and purpose and mission is to inspire and enable entrepreneurs to build decentralized jurisdictions with consent-based governance. And that's voluntary and contractual governance, not political or coercive. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, the subject of subscribing to governance rather than submitting to it. I've written a book called Pioneering Prosperity, the Moore's-on Model for Free Cities. I've also founded a membership of the Moore's-on Model Association. And what I want to hope to do today is invite you to shift your paradigm about what governance means. So first of all, I'd like to ask, show of hands, how many of you have unsubscribed from some kind of service within the last 12 months? Like cable, yeah, something they weren't serving you, so you were just able to unsubscribe. Okay. How many of you have unsubscribed from a government ever? No hands, huh? um, this is sort of what I mean by the subject of the talk, subscribing, not submitting. I don't know about you guys, but I hate the idea of having to submit to anything. So I've basically spent most of my life sort of in denial about the fact that I was submitting to a governance. I mean, a social contract, we get all these services, so we have to pay taxes, and that's just the way it is. And, how can you complain about that? It's just the way it is. We're not submitting, it's everybody's in that same situation. So I want to tell you about the day that I discovered what I was submitting to. It happened in 1981 in Portland, Oregon, where I was selling electronic typewriters. Now, I don't know how many of you are even able to remember 1981, but specifically, is there anybody that remembers what electronic typewriters were? Oh, there are a few people, okay. Some of you are too young, but it was a very brief thing where electronic typewriters were cutting edge technology, where secretaries didn't have to retype everything bunches of times. Of course, they were soon replaced by a computer on every desk, but for that brief moment, electronic typewriters were the best way to increase the productivity of secretaries. And my job was to sell them to businesses that wanted to increase their productivity. So I had to show them how that increased productivity, cut their costs, all that. But one day, I got an order from the district court in Portland, and I didn't have to sell them at all. They had just ordered 5 of the highest end electronic typewriters. And because they had a government contract with the manufacturer of the typewriters. So all I had to do was just take them out and show the secretaries how to use them. Simple. So I went out, nice office in the district court. There were 5 secretaries, each with a typewriter on their desk, and they were thrilled to see me because I was bringing them a brand new $3,500 electronic typewriter. And so they were really happy. So, I delivered, gave them the typewriters, and then I asked them, first question for the training is, what exactly do you do in this office? What do you use your electric typewriter for? So that we can figure out how to use these new electronic typewriters. Well, they spent their days rolling paper into their electric typewriter and filling out forms. That's all they did, fill out forms. They didn't need any memory because every form was different. I mean, they might have benefited from a low-end electronic typewriter for $1,000 each, that would have helped them make corrections faster if they made typos. But they definitely not only did not need $3,500 electronic typewriters, it actually made them less productive because it was harder to put the paper in than it was with an old electric typewriter. So I had to teach them how to get around all of those bells and whistles, all of those fun features, um, to do what they needed to do with this big monstrous machine they didn't need. Now, and I had to do that without spoiling their joy in getting a new toy. So that was a challenge. And what was even more of a challenge was satisfying my curiosity about why on earth did the district court spend all that money for something that was actually going to make their secretaries less productive. It didn't make any sense to me. What I found out was they had a budget for office equipment that year, and if they didn't spend it, they would lose it. Not only would they lose it, but they would also have a lower budget the following year. So they had to spend it. And whoever made the decision, like the department head, his incentive was, like all bureaucrats, and like all humans, really, he wanted to increase his status and increase the possibility of getting promotions. And the way he increased his status was by increasing his budget. The higher the budget, the higher the status. The more staff, the higher the status. So by making secretaries more productive, he actually would have possibly had to lay off staff, which would have hurt his status rather than helping it. And once I understood that, it wasn't just this one bureaucrat in the district court in Portland, Oregon. It was every single department head in every government office in the entire country, perhaps even in the entire world, who had these perverse incentives to waste taxpayer money. And when I thought about my taxpayer money was being used in such a wasteful way, and it wasn't a matter of, well, this one department head was kind of selfish and wasn't thinking about the public good and wasn't responsible for the taxpayer money he was using, but it was totally system-wide. There was no way, you can't expect all of these millions of bureaucrats to care about saving money for the taxpayers, because that's not where their incentive is. And when I realized that, I had to think about what I was when I thought about what I was submitting to and what the system was about. If you do any kind of a cost-benefit analysis of what's going on, there is a reason why we submit to that. And the reason that we submit to it is there are government services that we need and want. The benefit of government services, the benefit of giving power to government is basically two things. The one that's absolutely crucial is protection of life, liberty, and property. And we are all willing, we all want that. Even criminals want that. And we're mainly willing to pay for it. We understand we have to pay for that service to protect our lives, liberty, and property. The other service that we get from government that we want is a legal structure. We want to be able to live together in peace and get along with all of the, the people we live with. So in order to do that, we need some kind of rule set that we can all agree on, and we need some way of enforcing that rule set so that, things run smoothly. We have order, and we're happy to, put up with, submit to the government having power over us and being able to tell us what to do. So that cost, when you think about how high that cost is, I know we talk about federal income tax as a percentage, and it's a lot, but when you add in all of the other costs of government, all of the licenses and fees and fines and even the costs of compliance. Obviously, if you have a business, the cost of compliance with government regulations is extremely high. But even individuals, when you think about our costs in having to comply with things, go to the DMV, do the uh, just time spent doing our taxes every year. There's a lot of costs there. And the benefit, what are we actually seeing in benefit from the government? Especially now, these days, I tend to try to avoid the news because the news has been bad a lot lately, especially in the last week or two. Um, there's sometimes I can't avoid it, and the thing that I would mention as an example is how many people have heard the news about the Ukrainian refugee who was murdered on a train in North Carolina. Yes, so pretty much everyone's heard about that. I watched the video. I wished I hadn't, but I watched the entire video. And it had a profound effect on me. To watch this young woman, beautiful young woman, walking into that train. She had escaped the war in Ukraine. She thought she was safe in America. She walked in without even looking around much. She just walked in, she saw an empty seat, she sat down, she started looking at her phone. It was perfectly normal. She was just doing what you would expect to do. She wasn't even aware that just behind her was a monster, a violent criminal who had been arrested 14 times and released 14 times by the US justice system. And as she was sitting there minding her own business, he suddenly decided that he wanted to kill her. And he just stood up, stabbed her in the neck several times, and walked out muttering, "I got the white girl." And as horrifying as that was, the thing that probably disturbed me even more was what happened after. There were at least 4 witnesses that were standing there, and they just stood there and watched that woman bleed out on the floor of the train without lifting a finger to help her. And this was like, what has our culture come to? What has our society come to that something like that could happen? If any of them had helped her, I mean, by the time someone came from another car and tried to help her, it was too late. But if one of those 4 had tried to help her, they might have been able to save her life. And that is heartbreaking. So, sorry to bring up such a negative incident, but the other side of it is that there is hope, that there is a reason to have hope for the future. And that is, there are people now that are working on government as a service, providing government as a service, entrepreneurs and private companies that are developing ways to provide governance that is for profit. And although profit has been so demonized in our culture, by providing services for a profit, they get the information about what people actually want. An entrepreneur who's providing this kind of service cannot afford to ignore the customer, because this makes us, instead of being subjects or citizens or anything like that, we are actually customers. And in a free market, the customer is king. If you don't like it, you can leave and the entrepreneur will go out of business. You can refuse to subscribe and the entrepreneur will go out of business. And for the customer, in a decentralized, autonomous area that has this form of governance, and it can take different forms, but it's voluntary and contractual. That means there is a real contract, not a social contract, a real contract between the customer and the provider of the service, where the customer can take the provider to third-party arbitration if they do not fulfill their promises that they made for their services. So this makes all the difference. And I have an example for you for how this works. My book uses Ciudad Morazan in Honduras as the example, and I lived there for over 3 years, so I know how it works. And in this example, this is not one where I was there myself, and it's not one where I saw a video, but I had a good friend describe it to me. And I could relate to it because I've been in that situation that I'm going to tell you about. Morazan has a lot of regular community barbecues where everybody gets together in the Central Park, and it takes place at night when things have cooled off a bit and there's a gentle breeze. There's a barbecue, so there's the smell of barbecuing meat, and people line up and a volunteer hands out the meat, and then they go to the different picnic tables and talk to each other, chat. There's mosquitoes, but the mosquitoes are worth it for the good conversation. And so it's a very, very pleasant opportunity for the people in the community to come together. But what happened this one night, there was a couple that was fairly new to the community, and the husband and wife, see, most of the community is families with children, some couples, a few singles, but this one couple was arguing off to the side. And this is not something that's normally seen very much in Morazan. It happens a lot in Honduras. There's domestic violence is a big problem in Honduras, but it's not seen in Morazan. And this man hit his wife so hard she was almost knocked off her feet. And this was shocking because it just doesn't happen there. And I don't know how much you all know about the way domestic violence is handled, not only in the US, but in most of the world. The wife, there's really two choices. The wife can press charges, the police, arrest the guy, he's put in jail, a judge decides how long he's gonna stay in jail, and when he gets out, who knows what's gonna happen. The other choice, which is much more common, unfortunately, for some, the wife doesn't want to press charges because, well, any number of reasons. And if she doesn't press charges, the guy just goes free, no consequences, which makes it more likely that it's going to happen again. But Morazan is different because it has this different governance. The city can make different choices. And in this case, the city administrator talked to the wife. She said, well, I'd like for him to be punished, but I don't want him to go to jail. I need him. I can't have him sent to jail. And so the solution that the city came up with was to ban him for 1 week, where the police would not allow him to enter the city. And 1 week later, when he came back to the city, he had learned his lesson. And since then, there's been no repeat of that incident. And there's been no sign that he's hit his wife, even in private, because sometimes wives have bruises and stuff. Or it could be the opposite. I'm using husband and wife because that's more common, but anyway, there's been no evidence. And I think that was probably also a lesson for any other couples that might be thinking about doing something like that. So this was actually the worst violent crime that Ciudad Morazan has had in the 4 years of its existence. And it was resolved in a way that could never have happened in any kind of normal government. because they can follow common sense rather than being restricted by codified laws that, and procedures that this is the way this situation has to be handled. So, what I want us to take away is that there is hope. These cities are being built. There are people working on building these jurisdictions all around the world. And the more jurisdictions there are, the more choices people have to say, this particular city with its particular rule set and its particular business model is the one that meets my needs best. And right now the challenge is building these jurisdictions, bringing people together who want to work on them so that they can find each other and find collaborators and make it happen. And my part in it, I hope to play a part in it because that's what I see as my mission. So I have a Substack called Free Cities, which I publish an article every week about free cities in one way or another, sometimes excerpts from my book, sometimes, just news that's happening. And so that subscription to my Substack is free. I do not have a paid subscription on Substack. It's all free. I also have a website, which is moresonmodel.com, which you can also get a free subscription to. The free subscription to moresonmodel.com is every week I send a short email with a few links, like, maybe 5 or 6 links to news articles or, other blogs, podcasts, something like that, anything like that that is related to Free Cities so that people can keep up with it. And what's really good is I haven't had unsubscribes because people they don't have to click on the links, if they read the headline or, my little short 1-sentence blurb about it, and they can choose to read further or not, which, I'm a big believer in choice. So that is the free subscription. There is also a paid subscription to the Moores on Model Association if you want to go deeper. And that's designed to actually bring people together who are looking for collaborators, looking for more information, looking for more choices, like what's going on right now? Is there already a free city that I could be involved with, either can I find, fund, or found a free city myself? And so that's the reason for the paid subscription, is to be able to bring together that information and those people. So I do invite you to subscribe at any level you want. And I want to leave you with a reminder of what Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Thank you. Are there any questions? I think there's
any free cities in the United States?
That's a good question. Let's come back to that. If we use a microphone, then it gets recorded, so there's a microphone right there. So,
her question then, are there any free cities in the United States?
Good question. Yeah, it is a good question. There are no autonomous jurisdictions, legally autonomous jurisdictions in the United States right now. And I think it would be difficult in the United States because politicians don't want to give up power. And the country is not desperate enough to feel the need to, bring economic development or things like that, like Honduras did. There are, however, intentional communities. And intentional communities, although they don't have any legal autonomy, they tend to be separated, and they have a lot of de facto autonomy because they're built by like-minded people who want that. They're not necessarily like run by entrepreneurs who are running the governance, but they have different legal structures that they can agree on in their community. So there is progress being made, and perhaps things like Elon Musk's, what, Star City, or he's building a couple of cities in Texas. So there are things being done in the US, even in the US, to try to get more freedom by creating different kinds of governance. Um, does that answer your question? Okay, Dwight.
So, it's possible in Honduras at this point because they created something called a DEDE.
ZA.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Can you
ZA
explain
is
that?
the Zone of Employment and Economic Development. Yes,
Okay, and so who owns, oh, and Morazon, Morazon?
ZAN,
Morazan.
Morazan.
Okay,
Yeah, it's Morazan or Morazan in English,
okay. Who
which I
owns
use.
it?
It, the ZA is actually owned, or the developer is an Italian businessman named Massimo Massoni, who is, he's a libertarian. He's been in Honduras for 30 years. He built a conglomerate and he has enough money. He's devoted $150 million to building this community with the goal of having 15,000 residents in 10 years. And he's funding it totally himself, no other investors. But when he told me about it, he said it was designed to provide a better quality of living to working class Hondurans. And to do that, he was bringing together manufacturers, like light manufacturing, with workers so that the light manufacturing would have easier regulations, they could pay more money to their workers, they could get more um, workers who were living right in the same community so they didn't have transportation problems. And for the workers, it's incredibly valuable because they can live close to where they work and not have to risk their lives on the roads of Honduras or in the surrounding area, which is extremely dangerous. And so they have all of this safety and security. Now, unfortunately, the Honduran people elected a socialist government less than a year after Morazan broke ground, and they threatened to expropriate the companies. So those companies backed out, and so there were no jobs. That was a big part of the business plan, was to have the jobs, that the income from the businesses, the taxes. They had to do taxes because the government insisted they had to have some kind of taxes, and the government gets 12% of whatever they collect in taxes. So the only tax in Morazan is a 5% tax on income that is sourced within Morazan. So if people earn their money in Morazan, the companies and people, they have to pay 5% of their income. But that's the only tax, no property taxes, no sales taxes, no, nothing else. And um, that funds, that was enough. Within 6 months after breaking ground, the ZEDE was actually profitable because it covered the cost of the private police and the, administration of the political administration of the ZEDE. Um,
What are the housing options there? And are they all rentals?
they're all rentals because this whole, I mean, that's another talk altogether, the rental model, because it gives the developer the flexibility to meet customer demands. So as customer needs change, as there's more demand for, say, office space versus residential space, or apartments versus single family homes, or whatever, the the entrepreneur can pivot and respond to those different needs. So that's the reason for the rental only. There's another ZA Prospero which has both a rental and a sales model. So I personally, after having studied it a lot, I believe the rental model is better. I think home ownership in cities has been wildly overhyped. That there are much better investments than buying a home in a lot of instances. I mean, traditionally, home ownership's been really great, especially in the US. But I think there's good reasons to rent instead and then use the money that you save to invest in other kinds of things that might be more, more likely to meet your needs, your financial needs. Uh,
I think you said the target was 15,000 people?
yes.
Okay, and what's the current population?
Uh, it's a little over 200.
Okay.
Now, would have been on track except for the hostile government. Because of the government threatening expropriation and publishing all of this propaganda about how the Zetis were trying to steal land and threaten Honduran sovereignty. Like a 60-acre plot is threatening the sovereignty of a country. I mean, this is crazy, but that's what they were saying. And so that has prevented the growth that we expected. We had to pause construction. But it's now growing again. There's a lot of construction going on currently. They've just finished building an apartment building, and there's a school that's being built right now. So it is growing.
And are there other businesses in
There actually are a couple of other businesses now that weren't as threatened by expropriation. The businesses that can move their business without having to have equipment and stuff like that expropriated, uh, there've finally been a few of them, a couple of them, that, like call centers, that have decided to,
call center?
yeah, because there's not that much equipment. Yes.
Very interesting to hear about this going on in Honduras. I'm involved in a parachute manufacturing company, and at a certain point during the Clinton years, 1.9% unemployment in my area here in Central Florida. We opened a place in Honduras. We had it for 10 years, and then it got way too dangerous. We were in the homicide capital of the world there.
Yes.
I'm kind of shocked. I didn't even know that it went total socialist under government. Can you tell me how much of an impact that has been on businesses and the right to actually put yourself at risk for a reward?
It's been enough that there's another election. This was election in 2021. There's another election this November, and everyone's expecting that the socialists will be voted out because they have proven themselves really. They've broken all their promises. They've broken the law themselves. They're obviously trying to gain power in illegal ways. They've had scandals. So we're expecting that this election will, whatever government gets elected this next time, will be open to negotiating with the Zetes, that even if they have to change the name and bring back the laws with a different name, we're expecting that we'll pretty much get everything we want. And I should point out, this was a Honduran initiative. They were desperate for foreign investment, and there were a few officials who realized they needed to give up some freedom, give up a space, a zone that had enough freedom to bring in foreign investment. Even so, it took them like 6 years to find anybody willing to take a chance on Honduras, and only 2 companies are building cities before the socialists came in. So I think things are going to really pick up, really change next year after we have a new government. Thank you. Those are good questions. How are we doing on time? I thought,
We're over. Time's up.
oh, sorry, somebody, I thought I had my clock on, but it didn't go off. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you so much.